I thought I was protecting my land. Instead, I uncovered a multi-million-dollar HOA scheme hiding in plain sight. Imagine waking up to find strangers drilling into your backyard, not criminals, but contractors hired by your own neighborhood association, without your permission. It was supposed to be a normal morning, but when I looked out the kitchen window, I nearly dropped my coffee. A giant drilling machine was tearing through the eastern edge of my property. 3 men in hard hats were marking the ground with orange paint like they owned it. I rushed outside. "Hey, what do you think you're doing?" The tallest man didn't even flinch. "Drilling a well," he said casually, "on my land." "HOA gave us a permit," he replied, handing me some folded papers. Sure enough, the documents had the Pine Grove Estates HOA logo stamped at the top, claiming the right to drill on my property. The thing is, I never signed anything. The easement twist. My grandfather left me this 5-acre land before he passed, land that sat right beside the upscale Pine Grove Estates. I was never part of a HOA. My house stood before that development even existed. So how could they possibly have permission? 20 minutes later, a black SUV pulled up. Out stepped Margaret Wilson, HOA president, oozing control and designer sunglasses. She didn't smile. She didn't shake my hand. She didn't even pretend to be apologetic. "According to an easement your grandfather signed years ago, we're allowed to access the aquifer beneath your property in emergencies," she said, holding up another document. "One well. That's what the fine print allowed. But as I scanned my land, I saw orange spray paint marking multiple sites. This doesn't give you the right to build a water park on my land," I snapped. Her response? "Our legal team says the spirit of the agreement allows for more access during severe drought conditions." Then she turned and walked away. Act 3. Something felt off. But here's the thing. There wasn't a drought. My own well was working fine. I called the county water authority. No emergency declared, they told me. Just voluntary conservation. So what was this really about? That evening, I drove into Pine Grove Estates to take a closer look. Sprinklers were running. Lawns were green. The community pool was being refilled. Then I saw it, a massive sign near the front gate. "Coming soon, Pine Grove Estates luxury water features and resident lake." They weren't drilling to survive. They were stealing my water to build fountains in a fake lake. Act 4. The stakes rise. When I returned home, 3 separate crews were now drilling across my land. And standing in my driveway, watching like it was his personal show, was Frank Miller, one of the HOA board members. "Big project." He grinned. "Margaret said this'll bump our home values up by 15%. That's when it hit me. This wasn't carelessness. It was coordinated, calculated, and now it was personal. They thought I wouldn't fight back, but they forgot who this land really belongs to. And the war for water had just begun. Stay tuned because what I discovered next changed everything. She said it was an emergency, but Frank, my neighbor, just laughed. "Emergency of luxury, maybe," he smirked. "My wife Donna's on the landscaping committee. They've been planning this for months." So much for drought. I thanked him, walked inside, and picked up the phone. It was time to get a lawyer. Legal revelations. Attorney James Powell didn't mince words. "Based on the documents you've shown me," he said, flipping through the easement agreement, "they've clearly violated the terms. This only permits one emergency well, not a full-scale water network. So I can stop them." "Yes, but not immediately," he said with a sigh. "We'll have to file for an injunction. That takes time. Until then, document everything. Photos, videos, logs. If it goes to court, this will matter." The deception deepens. By the time I got home, 3 wells had already been drilled. A 4th was underway. Pipes snaked across my land, tearing through my garden, cutting down trees my grandfather had planted with his bare hands. I grabbed my phone and photographed every inch. Then something strange caught my eye. The pipes. They weren't heading toward Pine Grove Estates. They were going somewhere else. I followed them, through brush, past the fence line. And there it was, a survey stake, a sign, future site of Lakeview Mall and Entertainment Complex. They weren't just stealing water for fountains. They were selling it to commercial developers. The counterattack begins. That night, a letter arrived from the HOA. It wasn't an apology. It was a threat. They'd listed violations on my property: overgrown grass, improper fence height, unauthorized structures, thousands of dollars in potential fines. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was war. But they'd underestimated me. As I stared out the window at the floodlit drilling rigs, a question sparked in my mind. The easement gave them permission to drill. But did it say what I had to do with those wells after? I started reading, line by line, over and over, and there it was, no mention of post-drilling access or maintenance. Nothing stopped me from sealing them shut. The plan. At 5 a.m., I watched from my kitchen window as Margaret Wilson, president of the HOA, marched onto my land with a clipboard. 4 wells drilled. 3 more marked. She waved at me like she was inspecting her property. My stomach turned. That afternoon, I called a friend in construction. "Hey, Mike, I need a cement mixer." "Planning a patio." "Something like that," I said. "Also, how much concrete to fill a vertical shaft 8 inches wide, 40 feet deep?" Mike paused. "That's oddly specific." I just smiled. I had work to do. The sabotage. I visited hardware stores in 3 different towns, buying quick-set concrete in small amounts to avoid suspicion. Then, under cover of darkness, while the security guard dozed off in his truck, I wheeled the cement mixer to the first well. Batch by batch, I filled the shaft with thick concrete, tossing in broken metal and old pipes. It would be nearly impossible to drill through it again. 1 well down. 2 more followed the next 2 nights. The confrontation. On the 4th morning, furious pounding shook my front door. Margaret, 2 men in suits behind her. She barged in. "Our crew said the wells had been sabotaged," she barked. "Filled with concrete." I played dumb. "That's terrible. What's it got to do with me?" "You're responsible for the site," she snapped. "Actually," I said, "the easement lets you drill, but it doesn't make me responsible for anything after that." 1 man stepped forward. "Robert Hayes, HOA attorney. The sabotage has cost us over $50,000. We'll be adding that to your violations." I raised an eyebrow. "Speaking of violations, I've got weekly photos of my property from before your crews tore it up. I can prove your mess caused the damage." The 2nd man stepped up. "Detective Collins. Vandalism on this scale could be a felony." "Interesting," I said, pulling out my phone, "because I've documented everything." I showed them photos of the pipes leading away from the HOA toward the mole site. "Funny, isn't it, that your emergency wells are supplying commercial property when no water emergency has even been declared?" Margaret went pale. "And just so you know," I added, "I've recorded all our conversations, including the one where you admitted exceeding the limit of 1 well." Silence. Even the detective looked at her now, eyebrows raised. "You have no idea what you started," she muttered. She was right. But this time, I was the one holding the blueprint. Robert leaned in and whispered something to Margaret. Her posture stiffened, but her expression softened. "Perhaps we can discuss a compromise," she said finally, trying to sound reasonable. "I don't think so," I said coldly. "My lawyer's already filed for an emergency injunction. And the County Water Board and Environmental Agency, let's just say, they are very interested in your emergency wells." Detective Collins scribbled a note. "We'll need to put any vandalism claims on hold until these new allegations are investigated." Once they left, I collapsed into my kitchen chair. My body was still, but my hands were shaking. I'd stood my ground, but Margaret wasn't finished. Not with that much money on the line. Later that day, I caught one of the drilling crew snapping pictures of my garage, the same one storing my cement mixer. Then I noticed an unfamiliar car circling the block. Slowly. They were watching me. My phone buzzed. It was James, my lawyer. "Good news and bad," he said. "The judge is reviewing our case, but can't see us until next week." He paused. "But here's the troubling part. Pine Grove's HOA has pulled. They've been fast-tracking permits through the zoning board, permits that should have taken months. They've got allies in high places. I sighed. So we need a bigger weapon. Exactly. Get me something public. Something they can't cover up. As I hung up, I spotted movement near the newest well. A massive tanker truck was filling up with my water. The logo on its side read Evergreen Development Corporation. I followed it from a safe distance. The truck didn't go to Pine Grove. It went straight to the field where the new shopping mall was being built. Workers were already unloading the water into holding tanks. They weren't waiting on permits. They were already selling my water. I took dozens of photos and sent them straight to James. "This is it," he replied. "I'm forwarding this to the environmental regulators right now." When I got home, Margaret and Robert were waiting in my driveway. "We're prepared to offer compensation," Margaret began. "The HOA will pay you $5,000 for your inconvenience." "That's cute," I said. "You're selling my water to more developers for how much?" Robert cleared his throat. "We'll also waive all HOA violation fines." "I'm not even in your HOA," I reminded them. "You have zero jurisdiction over my land." Margaret's fake smile vanished. "Listen carefully. This project is moving forward, with or without your consent. If you keep interfering, there will be consequences." "Are you threatening me?" "I'm being realistic," she said coldly. "We have resources. Influence. Don't force us to use them." As they left, Frank Miller emerged from across the street. "Be careful," he warned quietly. "Margaret doesn't play fair. She ruined a homeowner last year, buried him in building code violations for daring to challenge her." "Thanks," I said, "but I'm not backing down." That night, as I prepared to cement another well, flashlights swept across my yard. Security guards. Patrolling now. They were tightening their grip. But so was I. I stared at photos of my land, ripped up, trespassed, desecrated. 7 wells, not one, and I wasn't going to wait around anymore. At 3 a.m., I called my cousin Mike. "I need the mixer. No questions." By dawn, we had a plan. I bought quickset cement from 3 different hardware stores, spreading the purchases across town to avoid suspicion. Mike rolled in with a mixer right after rush hour. "You're sure about this?" he asked. "I'm done asking nicely," I said, sliding on work gloves. "This is my land. My grandfather's legacy. I'm not letting them steal it." We started with the newest well. Cement thickened with metal rebars slushed down the shaft, sealing it from the inside out. 1 down. 6 to go. By noon, we'd sealed 4 completely. The 5th had piping already in. Mike yanked it out while I mixed the next batch. "Someone's coming," Mike warned, pointing at the cloud of dust rising from the road. "Keep going," I said. "We're finishing this." As we poured the 6th, car doors slammed. Margaret's voice sliced through the air. "Stop what you're doing," she screamed, charging forward in heels, sinking into the date. Jason Jenkins and 2 board members were hot on her trail. "What do you think you're doing?" she shrieked. "Home improvement," I said, cement still pouring. "On my land." Jason jabbed a finger. "You have no idea who you're messing with. We'll bury you in legal." Interesting word choice. I cut in, considering I'm the one doing the burying. Margaret whipped out her phone. "I'm calling the police." "Please do," I said, handing her a folder from my truck. "Here's your 7-well violation. Here's your mole connection. And here's a lovely blueprint for the HOA board's exclusive lakeside retreat, disguised as emergency water access." Jason lunged for the papers. Mike stepped in his path. "Also," I said, "I've been recording your threats. My lawyer finds them very compelling." As Mike moved to the final well, a white truck pulled up behind the board. A man in a county water authority vest stepped out, with a police officer beside him. "Perfect timing," I said, waving them over. "I called to report illegal aquifer drilling." Margaret went pale. "This is a private HOA matter," she stammered. "Actually," said the water official, glancing at his clipboard, "you've been drilling on private property without proper permits or easements." The officer stepped forward. "We've also received reports of trespassing and property damage." Jason's face crumpled as he tried to talk his way out. But it was too late. Their scheme was unraveling, one well at a time. I watched as the last stream of cement vanished into the seventh illegal well, thick, final, and strangely satisfying. A strange calm settled over me. "Officer," I said, handing over my file, "this shows the HOA crossed every legal boundary onto my land." As Margaret and Jason bickered with the officials, Mike quietly cleaned the mixer. "Your wells are sealed for good," I told the board, watching the cement bake under the sun. "And so are your secret water park dreams." Margaret's glare could have scorched concrete. "This isn't over," she hissed. The officer stepped forward. "We need all board members down at the station for questioning about illegal drilling on private property." As they were escorted away, I noticed neighbors gathering, murmuring, pointing. For the first time, fear crept in. I had one, but at what cost? The local news van showed up the next morning. My life hadn't calmed. It had exploded. I couldn't buy milk without cameras following me. My mailbox overflowed. Hate mail, thank you letters, interview requests. I was trending online. "You've gone viral," my lawyer chuckled. "They are calling you the Cement Avenger." I groaned. I just wanted to protect my land. "You did more than that," he replied. "The county investigation just uncovered something major." I opened the news site. The headline hit like a truck. "Sunset Valley HOA Scandal. Board sold water during fake drought." It was all a lie. Margaret and the board faked a water crisis to justify stealing from my land. The water wasn't for emergencies. It was being sold to developers building a mall. The so-called members' retreat was just a cover. That night, the mayor himself called. "We need you at the emergency town hall. People want answers." I didn't want to go. But at 7 p.m., I walked into the packed community center. The room went silent. Then, unexpectedly, heads nodded. An older woman patted the chair beside her. "Your grandfather would be proud." The meeting was chaos. Shouting, blame, demands. Then Margaret stormed in with a high-powered lawyer, waving her arms. "This is a witch hunt. Everything we did was for the community." "For your wallet, you mean," someone shouted. Margaret pointed straight at me. "He destroyed community infrastructure. Arrest him." The mayor silenced her. "Miss Thompson, the wells were illegal. The land wasn't yours. The county has already ruled." Her lawyer tried to speak, but the evidence was undeniable. Developers had wired money straight to Margaret's private firm. The county rep held up maps. "If they'd succeeded," he said grimly, "they'd have drained 23% of our aquifer in a year." Suddenly, Sarah Jenkins pushed her husband to the microphone. "Tell them," she demanded. Jason trembled. "Margaret promised us all a cut," he confessed. "The drought was fake. We made it up." Gasps, shouts, papers flew as residents demanded justice. By midnight, it was official. Margaret and 3 board members would face criminal charges. The HOA charter was suspended. Sunset Valley was in for a reckoning. I slipped out quietly. Weeks passed. My land felt empty, hollow, until one morning, neighbors knocked. "We want to make this right," the new transition chair said. "We don't want your land. We want your permission to build something better." They proposed turning the back section into a protected nature preserve. I'd keep ownership, but it would serve the community and honor what I fought for. "And the cement?" I asked. "It stays," she smiled, "as a warning and a symbol." Months later, my back acreage was alive. Dozens of volunteers planted native trees around each cap well. Each cap bore a small plaque telling the story. Sarah Jenkins showed me plans for a conservation education center. "We want to name it after your grandfather," she said softly. Kids decorated a rain garden with river rocks. Her husband, now doing community service, pulled weeds nearby. "The hydrologist says your cementing saved the aquifer," Sarah added. "The new HOA charter bans water exploitation. Permanently." A reporter from a national environmental magazine snapped photos. "Will you tell your story?" she asked. "People need to know one person can still make a difference." Before I could answer, Margaret's luxury SUV sped past. She didn't live here anymore. After pleading guilty, her empire crumbled. But still, she slowed down just long enough to glare at everything she'd lost. She still doesn't get it, Sarah said quietly. This was never about money. As the evening fell, we gathered around the largest well cap. The mayor handed me a gold key to the new kiosk. Sometimes, he said, one person's courage reminds us all what community really means. I looked out at the transformed land, once my grandfather's quiet retreat, now filled with birds, laughter, and lessons. I never wanted to fight, I told the crowd. I just wanted to protect what was mine. An old man nodded, and in doing so, you protected what was ours, too. As twilight wrapped the preserve in soft gold, I walked home along the new trail. At the edge of my land stood a wooden sign.